October 20 and 21, 2011, the Intercontinental Hotel in Makati. Business and civil society leaders and representatives gathered to celebrate a new breed of Filipinos who use business models to address the country's social problems. Social Enterprise, the next business model, was organized by the Peace and Equity Foundation in partnership with the League of Corporate Foundations, the Management Association of the Philippines, the Philippine Business for Social Progress, and the Pinoy Me Foundation. The goal was to engage thought leaders and push frontiers in a conference that's about helping rural communities through social enterprise. Practitioners narrated how they were able to achieve financial sustainability and social impact. Case studies were tackled and a generous amount of time was spent in the exchange of ideas, experiences, and recommendations. The groundbreaking conference was regarded as the first to propagate successful business models of social enterprises, all of them designed to help rural households out of poverty.
PEF was founded exactly 10 years ago to administer a 1.3 billion fund then, which civil society was to use for its social development programs. As a social investor, we in PEF have worked closely with cooperatives, people's organizations, and NGOs to provide potable water, healthcare, housing, and disaster relief. We have assisted numerous organizations based in communities in their livelihood and microfinance activities to help small entrepreneurs. While PEF started as a kind of one-size-fits-all grant maker, after 10 years and many successful projects and even more of a harvest in insights and learnings, we decided to focus on where we felt PEF could create even more impact and realize better outcomes, and that is through social enterprises. PEF and the 4 co-organizers of this conference are committed to building a new breed of entrepreneurs and social organizations, such as the examples we will be talking about and sharing in the next 2 days, which represent perhaps a different kind of model, a different kind of business model to solve our most nagging economic and social problems. Social entrepreneurship as a business model, we find, is more democratic and participatory, involving stakeholders, especially at the grassroots. There is a wide base that participates in the enterprise and an even wider base that benefits from that same social enterprise. In a sense, social entrepreneurship can combine the inclusiveness and social advocacy of civil society with the profitability, efficiency, and competitiveness of business. In the Philippines, where underdevelopment is exacerbated by gross socioeconomic inequalities, social entrepreneurship seems to us a viable model to address the country's most serious problem, which brings us all together in this room, that is widespread poverty.
The rudimentary definition of social enterprise as business with a social mission. That's usually how it's described, business with a social mission. So in this conference, we will concern ourselves less with definition and focus more on action. Our intention is to explore how we can create more of these initiatives that challenge the market and aim to change the rules of the game to benefit the poor and the marginalized. By enlarging this space in the social enterprise milieu, we hope to see a future wherein all businesses will be done this way. Our vision is to make social enterprise as the next business model. Thank you.
With social enterprises defined and hard questions asked, the conference moved on to portray the current landscape of the sector, including challenges, stumbling blocks, and the realities in the Philippines and the rest of the world, and how these factors can affect the development of social enterprise in the country.
New space called social enterprise emerged as the convergence between two forces that are looking for strategic direction. So the business and the NGO. Business is becoming more socially responsible, partly because of social pressure, partly out of a need to become more efficient in an increasingly competitive global economic environment, and partly to develop a sustainable market for their continued existence. Thus, from pure philanthropy, that's where it started, not business philanthropy, it became corporate social responsibility. Now it's becoming more a new concept called shared values. NGOs, on the other hand, have learned to become entrepreneurial, realizing that as a result of the declining grant funds, they need to generate revenues to fund their social mission. What is phenomenal in this development is that the two formerly opposing forces are now finding common ground. While this does not imply that we have achieved nirvana, no. What is significant in the prospect of harnessing the strength of these two forces. This is the new sphere in which so much innovation is taking place. At the same time, we also see that the problem is massive. That the volume of poverty, the trend towards increasing inequity in our country is still very much uncontrolled. Therefore, the solutions that we will think of will have to be big as well. We have to be ambitious.
Things are happening around us that we seem to have ignored, di ba? And therefore, there has to be now a chance to start asking very important questions. And from that initial overarching question, I guess when you look at the scope of social enterprise, therefore there seems to be like a calling, di ba? There seems to be a voice telling us you have to change, you have to transform. But the whole transformation process, I think many of us here are asking the same questions, asking similar questions. Questions like, do we sacrifice sustainability and profitability when we do things like this? How do we manage cost in this kind of an environment? How do we handle product development at this age of cyberspace and the increasing influence of social media networks on the lives of our markets? How do we maintain effective management to sustain our business? Because majority of the people here are NGO managers, and going into business management is an entirely different skill set. In the area of financing, what will be the right financing mix? What are the necessary financing mechanisms for capital infusion? What will be the phase of equity investment, especially when investors have similar advocacy as that of the social entrepreneur? But we want investments that will affect communities. Now, it's not anymore just the return on my financial investment, but also the return of the social return on my investment, as well as the environmental return on my investment.
Now, what are the global trends in terms of food security and poverty? If you look at the Global Hunger Index, which rates countries on the level of hunger, 0, no hunger, 100%, everybody is hungry. But you see, the serious, alarming, and extremely alarming state of hunger are concentrated in South Asia, in Sub-Saharan Africa, because of the the greed on the war in Africa, and here in Southeast Asia, practically Bangladesh and India. And if you look at the Millennium Development Goal to eliminate hunger by 50% in 2015, which was originally 16% in 1990, this might not be achieved because as of 2010, you have 14% achievement and our target is 8%, supposed to be 8%. So we may not attain that global millennium target for hunger elimination. And a country's state of development is linked with the food security of the population. The challenge ahead to ensure food security and alleviate poverty and attain sustainable development is by no means a work in Rizal Park. There is a need, therefore, to form strategic alliances because attaining the goals of poverty alleviation and sustainable development is central to a country's citizenry. From this, I have 4 recommendations. The first is that social enterprises should advocate for the acceleration of public and private investments to improve smallholder productivity. The second recommendation is to establish within the Social Enterprise Consortium a need to establish a policy research arm that will be responsible in monitoring your social enterprises program, from input monitoring to impact assessment component of that system. Number 3 is the enhancement of technical assistance to social enterprises in cluster supply value chain management. We still recognize the importance of this, and therefore, as a business tool, but understanding the segments and opportunities across segments is very important. I think it's a notable cause for you to continue your mentoring, continue your capacity building activities. My last, and to me the most important recommendation of all, is for all of us to advocate for a sustainable social enterprise development program as a mainstream anti-poverty program through the PPP.
But why do we have to look ahead? There must be an ROI for looking ahead. First, those who do find their companies with 15% less inventory. And this is based on a study. Second, 17% higher order fulfillment. So they are doing better than those who do not look ahead. 35% shorter cash-to-cash cycle times. And at the same time, 1/10 as many stockouts. That's the ROI. Look at this one. 33rd largest economy in the world, the Philippines, the 12th largest economy in Asia, the 4th largest economy in Southeast Asia. Those figures were a lot better, you know that, 30 years ago. Look at this one, population. I'm not making any political statement here. I'm just giving you the facts. 2040, that's 42 million Filipinos. That's a fact. I mean, given the trends, that's what the population will be by 2040. But what are the components of that population as a basis for doing business? Look at this one. Urban population is going to grow, meaning even if you have 142 million, a lot of them will be in the urban areas. By 2020, in the Philippines, that would be about 80 million Filipinos, 80 million consumers. And let me just give you a takeaway on what is happening and what it is that we can look for in the future. Possibility that the remittances will go down, but maybe that possibility, that kind of a possibility, the percentage is going down. And then we have the unwarranted political intervention, something that must happen, but the unwarranted intervention is something that we have to watch out for. The upside, the food and beverage, services would certainly be growing. It is now the energizer of our economy. And then e-commerce is going to grow. You are social enterprises, you've got to go into e-commerce as well. And then there is also the possibility of increasing foreign direct investments.
And this is why, at the end of the day, for all of the information that you've given, my biggest concern is China. My biggest concern is the biggest consumer so far in this part of the world and increasingly in the world. That's 1 billion increasingly affluent Chinese. And why is that important? My concern is China. Because as China progresses, as its population becomes wealthier, they shift from bicycles to cars. And as they shift from bicycles to cars, they use more oil. Then they want to live in condos and not shanties. If you look at the current 5-year plan of China, they plan, and they probably will achieve this, whether it's corn or rice, greater demand will push prices up, and you have 1 billion people with increasing amounts of money wanting to eat the same rice that you're trying to provide at a low cost. Those prices will go up. If your farming communities are in a position, if you've organized them so well in time for that rise in prices, they will benefit from it because that increase in price is their revenue. If you fail to organize them and the prices go up and their productivity is low, they will be poorer than when you first found them because you will have lent them money to try and grow themselves out of poverty, so they will be poor and in debt and hungry. This is the challenge we're faced with.
One of the characteristics of social enterprise, as defined by PAR, is that it should be development-focused. Above all, social enterprise should empower community members to allow them to uplift their lives. Given the right training and nurturing, these poor communities can be instrumental in the success of social enterprise, which is primarily designed to alleviate poverty.
It must be clear that the object of social enterprise is the poor and the marginalized. If the business only helps them marginally, it is just a regular business and does not have a social purpose. The business must employ a large number of poor at an exploitative or even market rates, cannot qualify as a social enterprise.
We view the poor primarily as producers, not as consumers. Raising the income of the poor as producers is the best way to alleviate poverty.
Helping them rise above poverty will demand a lot of participation among the poor and the marginalized. This in turn requires building their capacities so they can be productive members of a social enterprise.
We do not only want to produce graduates who will become hardworking and efficient employees, but we also want our graduates who have a thorough understanding of management principles and all knowledge and skills needed to become a successful entrepreneur imbued with social responsibility.
Some NGOs and social entrepreneurs that have already imbibed the sustainable model of business shared stories of proven processes and techniques.
Going into business was not the foremost intention of the sisters. Their only desire was to develop the value and the dignity of work so that they could be self-sufficient and self-reliant. Yung sariling pawis, sariling sikap, hindi nagpapalimos. We wanted to instill this in the students, in the girls. Now you have to work to feed yourselves.
If you think about it, here in Manila, we have everything that we need, right? We have electricity, we have water, but many rural communities, and of course 80% of the poor live in rural communities, do not have access to very basic things that they need to develop. The way we see things is that we're trying to build a bridge so that these communities have access to the products that they need to develop. So it could be solar appliances, it could be eyeglasses. A lot of people, can't read and work because they don't have eyeglasses. cook stoves, water purifiers. There are many, many innovative solutions out there.
We met a lot of small farmers group, and that was the time we realized their concerns and problems. Farmers are forced to sell their product at a loss. They have no choice. Based on that, we have to find a practical, viable solution. Since 60% of the cost of production in conventional farming are inputs, if you're buying it, producing your own inputs is the most logical, practical, and viable solution, such as organic fertilizer, natural pest control, organic seeds, but most important of all, initiate a buyback program for all their products at an assured fair price.
I realized that what we are doing is already part and parcel of the social enterprise innovations. We don't interpret profit only in terms of money, but on social and environmental benefit. We also measure how many jobs we provided, how many small farmers benefited from our system, how many families have indirectly benefited by our efforts, how many consumers had access to healthy and safe foods, how many tons of chemicals and toxic substances have we saved from being dumped into the environment because of our commitment to organic agriculture.
The second characteristic of social enterprise is that it should be business-oriented. To be sustainable, the enterprise has to be profitable while being managed alongside proven business models.
There should be no longer any argument that social enterprise needs to be profitable if it is to succeed in achieving its mission. This simply means the enterprise must earn income more than it would cost to produce its product or service. The key is to use tried and tested business principles in attaining commercial success in social enterprise. Budding social entrepreneurs need to acquire the risk-taking behavior usually associated with business. They need to learn to become successful while being efficient.
What we've heard so far is that when we move to social enterprises as NGOs, we now begin to face the problems of real business. That's number one, no? We begin to get exposed to questions about quality, delivery, price, the fluctuating prices of oil, factors that will affect the viability of business.
Committees, governance boards are not entrepreneurs. The worst thing you can do is to start a social enterprise run by a committee. Businesses need to move very quickly, and committees take too long to make decisions. That's why the customer is king. Right? So, is sustainability unlimited funding? Is sustainability even revenue? No. Sustainability is repeat business.
As mainstream business, social enterprises will have a better chance of thriving if provided with appropriate support systems or infrastructure. This may include what's called a social enterprise ecosystem, financing institutions, learning and capacity development, policy and legal frameworks.
Where the poverty is located, that is not where the microfinance interventions are. So you see, microfinance is growing, but mostly in the urban areas.
Small producers will always be marginalized from the chain at the small volume that they produce. They will always be at the mercy of those with the power to aggregate. Thus, the challenge in value chain development is in helping the poor to aggregate their product, consolidate their product, so that they can sell them as close as possible to the end consumer and capture the value of the processes in between.
CRS assist the small farmers to consolidate volume, because as I said yesterday, in large-scale markets, the key is the economies of scale. And until the farmers reach a scale, then they will not earn. They will even fail. So.
In many industries right now, where do you think is the most and strongest powerful enabler to succeed in business? It's basically supply chain. Supply chain are for micro enterprises. And if you want to become sustainable, there has to be some level of serious attention in your supply management. Because this is the thing that's going to hold the breath of your business or your enterprise.
The challenge then that should capture our imagination in building social enterprise is how to expand the role of the poor in the chain in order to capture as much value as possible for them. In the future, there could only be one way of doing business or describing social enterprise development. The lines between business and NGO, as Dan initially described it, will be blurred. And once mainstream value chain development can become the way business is done in the future.
In the era of globalization, market is king. The social enterprise challenge is finding the right product or service that can be produced by the poor at a price that consumers are willing to buy.
So, market wants original products. They don't, well, the specialty market anyway, they don't want anything that you can find everywhere. There's a growing trend of natural and organic. Okay. And they want fair trade and socially responsible products, or products that are made by people who are, in the cultural communities, and environment-friendly products.
Lesson number 1. We social enterprises have an advantage. Our stories can sell to people's hearts. And that's what happened to us. Our products were crude. They weren't pretty. They weren't world-class, but we sold. Because the customers saw that hungry child of Negros, the malnourished child of Pregros in every product. And when he bought the product, he knew he was helping a malnourished child. It wasn't the product itself.
You have to be efficient, right? You can't create products where you're going to have a hard time finding your labor, materials, and your production group and organization if they're not around and ready. You have to be the least wasteful. And we need to produce what the market wants. You have to look around and think of things that are not yet being created. And this is where innovation comes in. Your community might have a lot of raw materials, but not enough skills. So we need to be able to see what is the lack. There are all these designers and other technical people who can help. One good product is better than 10 that are mediocre. That's what I've always believed in, no? Just one good product. Focus there. One material.
The two-day conference covered a lot of ground and, like any productive endeavor, came up with several recommendations and prioritized courses of action. It was suggested that an SE ecosystem be developed to allow everyone involved to scale a vital function in the survival and success of social enterprise. One of the components of the ecosystem is building the capacity of social entrepreneurs and NGOs to tackle the real world of business. This includes the participation of the academe and business executives who will be encouraged to share their expertise with entrepreneurs. Businesses will be harnessed in the supply chain and shared value to the fullest. But it has to make a business sense. Viability remains the key. In terms of financing, a mapping project will be undertaken to determine where lending is needed most and to find ways to make credit less costly and accessible to small producers. In summary, these four major areas of concern, which were thoroughly discussed during the sessions, were considered as the priority courses of action in the next step of building social enterprise as the new business model.